G'day, guys, and welcome to the Centre Bounce, where we talk about those mid prices under 300k. Stay tuned. Yes, Big J.
Joe.
We spoke about some of those more expensive options, but we're now looking a lot further down the price charts, aren't we, Big J?
Yeah, that's it, right? And these are the guys that maybe you're not going to keep for the whole year. I think there's a couple on this list that definitely you could, but majority of these guys you're not going to keep all year. They're guys that provide extreme value. Maybe they're up and coming guys who, hey, look, someone's left in their team, so now you're going to fill their spot, or guys returning from big injury, or a more mature age type player that's moving clubs for a particular reason or so. So, yeah, having a good look here. These are the ones that generally you fill up with your extra little bit of value. You got 100k left in the bank. You don't want a rookie chuck one of these guys in.
Yeah, exactly. So we've got a few people to go through today. We'll start off in the backline with Ari Showmaker, who played his first 4 games of his career last year in 2024, coming off. It was a real slider in his draft class. A lot of people were sort of critical of his off-field shenanigans, but his ability as a player definitely cannot be undersold, and he is apparently flying in this preseason. They've lost an important defender in battle who's gone across to the Hawks. Does that open up a spot for Ari? I think there are a lot of St Kilda supporters who think so.
Yeah, I think so as well. I mean, Wilkie can't do everything all the time. So having someone like him in the team definitely does fill up that battle type position. From memory, he's booming kicks, man. Like, this is a kid that was supposed to be top 10. Obviously, you kind of alluded to other things happening. Maybe there was some off-field things and slid down the list. St Kilda got him for nothing. And we saw in Supercoach, those people that maybe had him the entire year. I don't think anyone brought him in towards the end, but 9 kick-ins, Joe. It is not a bad thing to happen.
Yep.
He can kick it 60 meters plus pretty easy just from standing still. This guy, if they keep doing like the longest kick or the, you know what they do in the grand final parade, that kind of thing, he's going to just keep winning every year. So some people have him, some people don't. I think a lot more people have Kadeem Coleman, who we'll talk about next. But are you considering him?
I'm not at the moment, no. Certainly, I think where the allure is that he is playing for the Saints, who have the best buy this year, whereas Kadeem Coleman, who we're going to talk about right now, has the earlier buy, which means that he'll be missing 1 extra game. Plus, Kadeem Coleman has, of course, the soft tissue injuries history and coming off an ACL that he sustained in the first game of the season last year. So a few things that Showmaker has over Kadeem Coleman, but what Kadeem Coleman does have is we've seen it for a bit longer. This is not his first season or first 4 games that he's played. He's played a lot more, so he's a mature age player. We've seen in the preseason what it's like when he plays that halfback role. His scoring certainly is impressive. He is young. He's in the prime of his career, and you've got someone over there, Brisbane, like Zorko, for example, who you'd anticipate will start to be moved out shortly.
Yeah, I mean, like the guy dominated in the grand final, dominated in the last few final series games as well for last year. There's a lot of fans hoping that he's going to continue that on. Some people think not. Some people think yes. Someone to watch out for. 1 sniff of an injury, though. Cool, I'll go grab someone cheaper. So for me, maybe. But yeah, definitely one to watch. That early buy really hurts, though. I guess it's cheap enough that you've got a rookie on the bench. It's best 18. It doesn't matter as much.
That's exactly right. So Kadeem Coleman, one that I think I have in my starting team. Do you have him?
Not at the moment, but he's cheap enough that he can slot straight in if I need to.
Fair enough. Then move to Tom Doedee, who is the new acquisition for the Brisbane Lions, moving away from the Adelaide Crows. They were really happy to get him, even though he's still recovering from an ACL, but the Brisbane Lions are more than happy to trade for him.
Yeah, it's one of those players. You almost forgot he's actually an AFL player and what Brisbane actually gave to get him in. Can't remember if off the top of my head it was a draft pick or if it was just, hey, look, here's a bunch of cash, leave from Adelaide. But the fact that he really didn't play at all last year, didn't play many games in 2023 either, really just shows, hey, this is how much faith we've got in the player. Let's just let him develop. This is how good Brisbane of a team is, Joe. They've said, Kadeen Coleman, Doedee, we'll just let you guys survive in the VFL and in just recovery sessions. We just won't care too much. I think he's going to slot straight into the team. If he's fit, it's just scoring potential. I mean, you don't know what you're going to get out of him after a couple of years being out of the game. And does that mean that he plays a bunch of VFL beforehand? I think so. I would be surprised if he plays round one.
Yep. So not in my side either, that's for sure. Then move across to Jacob Blight, who has an opportunity to really take that next, I suppose, stage of his career and get it underway. Only played the 3 games last year for the Tigers. Another preseason under his belt, and appears to be training very well over the preseason, impressing track watchers. So he's one that you want to have a look at. Potentially, you can have a look at him, but he's not in my side for now. 246k. As we can see here, I can scroll down a little bit more. His Supercoach points really aren't anything to sing home about. He is, of course, a back pocket, a real defender type player. I've looked at his heat map. It is in the back line, so he is a full-blown defender there. You're not going to get... Well, maybe you might think there will be a lot of disposals if he's playing for the Tigers, who we anticipate will win the wooden spoon. Then, hey, he could end up having a very solid heat map down in the back line.
Yeah, I think for me, it really just depends on first off, if he plays, but if they had lost someone like abroad, North Melbourne, a couple of other clubs are trying to go after him. If that had happened, mate, Jacob Blight getting your team. I would have loved him at North Melbourne, mid-season draftee. We saw images, times, hey, look, he did have some pretty good intercepts and whatnot throughout the season last year. And as you say, Joe, preseason, the guy's just a gun. He wants to make a career for himself. One to track in the preseason over the preseason games, just to see how much ball and how much ball use they use through him off the halfback. No Rioli there, a couple of other players moving out of position as well. So they're trying to change things up a bit. There's been some talks as well of Noah Bolter potentially moving a little bit forward. Maybe he's going to be a new key forward, or at least a bit more of a swingman, because Blight can't do that. So maybe he takes a little bit more of those type of roles too. So one to watch, but as you say, a little bit pricey compared to some other people.
Well, he definitely will. Bolter will not be doing that for the first 4 weeks, because he will, of course, be copying that suspension for his off-field antics. So those 4 weeks could be a great opportunity for Blight to make a lot of money very quickly.
Cement a
Then
spot.
and to keep a spot. But yeah, Josh Sin is next. A lot of people hopeful that he's one that could see a bump after Houston's departure.
Well, that's it, right? I mean, we've talked endlessly around Sin, around Dylan Williams, who we'll talk about next. A few of these other players, Evans, Kane Farrell. What happens with that Port Adelaide backline? They have had a fair shuffle, and from all reports at the moment, Sin's the one that's kind of coming in and doing a few things. I have heard a bit of mixed bags, though. Hey, look, maybe he's playing a bit of wing. Maybe his disposal efficiency isn't that great. Maybe VFL a handful for a while with him too. So track 100% over the preseason. You almost wish that Port Adelaide played a round 0 game just so you could see him in the position that you wanted, locked in outside of just like practice games. Big risk, big reward, I think, for a lot of people.
And you can see he was, in and out of the side. He would play like 1 game and miss 25, and then play 3 and miss 5. So, obviously now that there's less competition coming out of the back line, could mean that he holds his spot a bit more. But you're right, though. The preseason reports are a mixed bag. And with the uncertainty at the moment, happy to forego him. If we get more data on hand that he is going to be in that halfback role, or if it's going to be like a Dylan Williams type player, for example, a lot of uncertainty coming out of Port Adelaide at the moment with who's the one who's going to step up. So I'm more than happy to wait and see how they go. And you never know that during the season things might change and they may end up swapping. and not have one person be the dedicated Houston replacement. And it could just end up being a team effort where Sin might have a time, Dylan Williams might have a time, Logan Evans might have a time. You know what I mean? So it's too many question marks coming out of Port Adelaide for my liking.
Yeah, I think so as well. Big wait and see. I'd rather risk it on someone else. Another player who is a little bit cheaper, happy to bring in Dylan Williams. We saw some of the stuff that he did. Sadly, he has cut his blonde hair. Bit sad. I'm pretty sure he had blonde hair and, rocking the John Noble and a few of these other guys. Played a little bit of wing from memory if you want to head over to his heat map, Joe, from games last year. One to watch in terms of backline talent and things like that. Is he in my team? No, but speculation could definitely be there. As you see, heat maps just galore. So does he break in? One to track in the preseason. If he doesn't feature this year, I have a prediction that he's going to look for a trade because the kid is too good not to be playing.
Well, it's a tough side to break into, so understandable.
Of course.
This is probably his best opportunity now this year with Houston departing. So a lot of people are fighting for that last spot. Yeah, he is a talented player. Having played 21 games in 2023, for him to all of a sudden drop back down to 5 certainly would have been a tough pill to swallow. So he's one who might look elsewhere for better opportunity, as has this guy, Jackson Pryor, having left the Brisbane Lions, unable to really cement himself in the side, 16, 11, 5, 4 games last year. So, ended up being a premiership team in 2023. They made it to the grand final and finished runners up. So tough side to break into, especially in what is a very, very solid back six at the Brisbane Lions. Come across to the Bombers for some more opportunity. Has been a neat player in defense, training, of course, with the defenders at the Bombers. Not really setting the world alight, though. Having said that, there was potential that he might be our kicking guy because very similar to Schoenmaker, this guy does have a booming kick and he's quite neat with it as well. So it's a tough backline to break into at the moment. However, he has every chance if Zach Reed continues to be cursed, for example, and goes down again. Pryor might be the first one up. There's obviously some talk that maybe Dylan Shield gets a gig, but personally, if Dylan Shield is going to come back into the side to play in the back line, I'd much prefer having Jackson Pryor, who actually has some defensive accountability. So one to continue monitoring, but so far it does not appear to be best 22.
Yeah, I think for me, continue monitoring is the right way to go. Who's up in the midfield, Joe? Who are we looking at?
Well, we got Isaac Cumming right off the bat. Fresh in new colours. Obviously moved across from GWS, having played a number of different roles over there, whether it be half-back or on a wing. Definitely everyone is hoping that he is playing a distributor half-back type of role for Adelaide, because when he does, he takes a lot of kick-ins. And I know a lot of people used to be really infuriated with him taking away kick-ins from other GWS defenders that they may have. So
Poor Lockie Whitfield.
Like Lockie Whitfield. Exactly. Yeah. So you can see he takes a lot of kick-ins and normally plays on a lot of the times. Unfortunately, in recent times, though, he has had that role be taken off him. And he might have gone to Adelaide hoping to have that role back.
Yeah, unfortunately, at the moment, he's currently dealing with some injuries, which has him sidelined for a while. I think it may be hamstring in a couple of months ready to go. So someone potentially you can downgrade to, or maybe he's ready round 1. We'll wait and see. And then that obviously affects fitness. I don't think there's a rush for him to play straight away, but with the type of player, how much money they spent on him as well, that they are pushing for him to play. So we'll wait and see with him, I think, at the moment.
Absolutely. Next on the list, we've got one Cam Guthrie. He ain't a rookie. He is not a rookie.
Blast from the past, Cam Guthrie. I think he's shaved his head now, done some other things. There's some training reports at the moment that he is fit. So I didn't want to put him in the list, but thought, hey, let's have a bit of a talk about him. We know what he can do. I think Geelong are trying to finish off with a lot of their established players. Does that mean that he's more a stopgap? Potentially? Does that mean that, hey, he's going to be one of those fitter players on field, the guys that, can play We'll wait and see. But injuries just hurt me. For his price, it's a no for me. What do you reckon, Joe?
Yeah, I agree. I don't even know. Is he really going to have a lot of games, because he was fully fit and healthy last year and people were considering starting him last year, but didn't take too long for him to do a soft tissue injury.
Well, that's
Same
it,
thing the
right?
year before, only managed to play the first 6 games, again, coming off a full preseason. So there are some players that are unfortunately just really injury prone. He is one of them,
Mhm.
especially later on in his career now, having played how many seasons? And you see the last 2 years, he's only managed to play a combined total of 10 games. Plus,
Yeah.
plus, he's also got the early buy. So that's another problem for a lot of people who are going to have someone like a Bailey Smith in their forward line from the Cats, as well as some Sydney Swans defenders, as well as some Brisbane defenders. There are a few players missing that week, and I don't want to miss yet another one with Cam Guthrie. So he's a no for me.
Yeah. I'm more than happy to let other people take on the risk. Let's be honest.
Then, in other words, I'm more than happy for other people to lose this year.
That's okay. I'll talk about losers, mate. Finlay McRae, the guy should have left his club, should have gone to St Kilda. At least he could have played with his brother. But there are some reports at the moment that he is doing well. It's the problem with McRae is since 2021, it's always been reports, hey, he does well in the preseason, and then either can't get a game, or when he gets a game, he doesn't do much, and then he just gets dropped back to the VFL. So, one to watch. The only problem with McRae, Carroll, and a couple of others potentially that could have been on this list is that the top 10 draftees, let's go top 20 draftees this year, was so good and so ready to go. I'd almost be wanting to pick someone like a Jagger Smith or Draper instead of him, which is really sad for a guy that you'd be hoping to finally break out, someone who's played close to just over 20 games and has had 4 years in a system.
Tough to play for a very good team.
Yeah.
You might be thinking, well, the fact that he's stayed around, maybe the club is giving him assurances that they're going to give him more opportunity in the midfield, but it's a pretty tight ship that they run over there in the midfield. A lot of chefs in the kitchen, and you can't obviously forget about Ed Allen as well, who's
Mm-hmm.
potentially could feature in there, and as well as the mainstays. Pendlebury is going around yet again. He hasn't retired, so he'll feature there as well. So there are a lot of players, obviously, to go. You don't have to mention him, and the day costs. So yeah, too many question marks again for me. Hard to see how he breaks into the side and stays in the side long enough for him to make us that money. So plus early buy. So yeah,
Yeah.
not for me, not for me. Jack Carroll, he had 15 games, so he's someone who had a bit more luck
He was
being
in my
in the
team for a
side,
while.
unlike Finn McRae. Took him a while to get going. Obviously, in his third season, really stood up with some injuries over there at Carlton. They were pretty injury ravaged, and Cripper loved playing with him. Had some good things to say about him, and he really played a role. Had 22% of CBAs and has moved across to the Saints now for even more opportunity, which you'd think he would get. Um,
Yeah.
and so, plus he's got the best buy in the business that the Saints have this year. So for people potentially thinking about him, there are a few positives going his way.
Yeah, I think so as well. I mean, like they brought him across to play. It's been well documented from guys like Jack Steele. Hey, look, we need a bit of help in the midfield. Does he play? One to watch in the preseason, but there's 100% opportunity there. They need to change a few things around. Hey, look, maybe he plays a bit more wing on the other side with Henry, frees up some other players to do different things. I think Crouch is retired as well, so there's some potential. Not that he was best 22 though, so a bit of a shake up. They want to build the team for success. They've got a lot of good players. Carroll was brought over for a reason. I don't think they're going to say, hey, look, you're now playing VFL. So one to watch. Just an awkward price, similar with McRae.
Of course. Then move to Nod, Nathan O'Driscoll.
Yep. Awkward price does not speak wonders for Nathan O'Driscoll. There's a lot of movement down at Freo. I think there's a few different players. The talk of Fife potentially kind of not doing as much this year. O'Driscoll and a guy that we will talk about in our other video in Erasmus. Definitely one to watch. His numbers are okay. I think it's time to break out. We've seen him play a little bit over the last couple of years as well. So there's definitely potential for him to play. It's just watch over the preseason, I think, for me, Joe. And the fact that he doesn't play any early buys kind of a little bit of credence to, hey, look, he actually could do quite well in Supercoach.
Yeah, it's true. Just looking at some of his fantasy numbers. Unfortunately, in the seconds, there's no Supercoach score in there, but so you have
Yep.
to refer to the fantasy points. And he's had a few games where he's managed to perform pretty well. In the waffle over there against grown men. So look, there's every possibility that he could be given more opportunity and responsibility this year. But one to continue monitoring. Agreed. So as you would want to, again, very similar to this player. Talking about opportunity, playing in the twos, playing well in the twos, and then monitoring over the preseason with hopes that he breaks into the side. A lot of
Mm.
similarity and the pricing as well is very similar between O'Driscoll and Sardis. Who the story is exactly the same, almost what we said. He is trying to fight for a spot in our midfield. He is a midfielder. He cannot play anywhere else. That's what we drafted him to do. He is an accumulator. He finds the ball at will. 40 disposals, 27, 32, 30. He is an accumulator and he's a burst player out of center squares. The only question is, who does he kick out of our midfield? Is it with Merritt playing more in the back line, potentially as a halfback distributor and mid? Or is
Mm-hmm.
it because Durham might play 50-50 split between mid and forward? There is a few question marks because we do have a few chefs in the kitchen at the Bombers. One to continue monitoring. He is flying this preseason and is really putting his hand up. He was best on ground in our latest match simulation, so he's not doing himself any disservice. Just keep monitoring to see if he breaks into the side.
Yeah, definitely. He's in my team at the moment, or at least around the mark, kicking out a Jagger Smith and a few of these other guys potentially. So one to watch. Early buy does hurt, but outside of that, you can forget one game for a 200k player. So definitely not too bad there. In the ruck line, there wasn't many. There was Tom Campbell, there was Ned Reeves, but I think the one on a lot of people's lips is Matt Flynn. Potentially could be an R2, R1 if you're really ballsy. I don't think it's going to happen. But I've seen for a lot of people's flex picks, and my team from December definitely had him in as well there. BJ Williams, are they going to play him a little bit more forward? Potentially. Matt Flynn was brought over from GWS to play that position. He said he wants to get fit, Joe. He says preseason's going okay. You hope so, because he hasn't played that many games. He hasn't even got to 40 yet. So it's a bit rough for a guy that's early to mid 20s. So breakout season you need be. Otherwise, it's another failed pick to West Coast.
Yeah, it's a little unfortunate that he comes in behind Mummy, obviously Big Shane Mumford, and then Briggs decided to absolutely go bananas as well as soon as he
Yeah.
entered into the comp. So yeah, Matt Flynn unfortunately was stuck being the second. Recruited by the Eagles. You'd anticipate for him to be a ruck. BJ Williams is quite mobile and nifty around the ground, and they do want to give Oscar Allen a bit of help in that forward line. It can't just be a one-man band up there in terms of marking targets. So, you'd hope and anticipate that he was recruited for a reason, and that's to play in round one. Then move to the forward line. Another guy who was recruited to definitely play in round one, isn't he?
Yep, 100%. Caleb Daniel, lock him in your team. I think a lot of people at the moment have him at F6 or F5. I know I totally have him at F5 at the moment. And, the other guys we're going to list here outside of Silvani, who's a bit of a speculative pick, they're to make up that F5, F6 spot, potentially play on the bench. Caleb Daniel, you have to lock him into your team. You know what he's done in previous years. Mate, if you're paying 260k for a guy that averages 90, you're very happy. I could see him almost averaging 100, Joe, in our teams. Still has the fitness, still has the pace, has the roll, has the good kicking. Mate, I'm running out of fingers, Joe. I'm not going two-handed with Caleb Daniel, but you will be when you're going, Caleb Daniel.
Yeah, I think this guy could genuinely be F1 for the year at that price. He's got a
Pretty
good
funny.
buy. We know what halfbacks do at North Melbourne. Even Zach Fisher, who is one of the most fraudulent players in the league, even he averaged pretty decently playing that role. So
That
if
is
you're a
true.
halfback playing at North Melbourne, then you're set. Caleb Daniel is one of the best kicks in the league. So
Yep.
um, no surprise that this guy really could end up being F1 for the year. So you lock him in your sides, guys. If you don't,
Yeah, 100%.
then this is an antipod that you don't want to be. You don't want to fade this guy. Um,
Like, I've
someone.
seen some people take him as far as F4. Cool.
Oh
But just
wow.
don't not play Caleb Daniel.
No, no, you just can't. He absolutely has to play. No doubt about it. We then move to the next guy, Jack Silvani, as Big J said, is a bit more of a speculative selection because he is a jack of all trades, master of none, which means that he is unfortunately always flung around all over the ground in
Mhm.
terms of the roles that he has to play for the team, whether it be in the center bounces as a backup ruck or whether it be forward. Nowadays, he's been training in defense from reports, and that is probably one of the best spots for him to be at because at least it means that he can get some intercept marks as well as link up with some play up the ground. He isn't the fastest player, is the problem. So I can't see him accumulating a lot of pill, and he will not be doing the dashing. That will be left to the likes of Jagger Smith and Sard, Doherty,
Mm.
perhaps, and those types of players. But if you want someone who has a pretty decent run, Carlton have the biggest Mickey Mouse fixture in the league this year. Again, them paper bags, man. Carlton's paper bags run deep. So, he's got a pretty good fixture this year, and he seems to have not missed a session in the preseason. So one to keep an eye on.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, a lot of people picked Comben last year at a similar price, maybe a little bit cheaper, but someone who hadn't played a lot of games. Silvani definitely has. They want to play him. They're just trying to find a role. If he takes a few intercept marks, cool, you offload him at 400K. And I think you're happy to start the season. So you're picking Daniel first, Silvani if you're really batting deep and want someone cheaper.
You really want a
Or
pod.
draft.
No, I'm not sure many people will be selecting Silvani, so it will definitely be a pod selection.
There you go.
Uh,
Tom Lynch is definitely someone to watch over the preseason. We know what he has done being a good key forward. Played a lot of games, hasn't really had a lot of seasons, though, where he's played a full season, which is something to worry about a little bit. But we don't need a full season from him. We only need a good 5 or 6 games to start the season. Richmond don't have anyone else to kick to in the forward line. Is that good? Potentially, because he's getting all the ball. Is that bad? Because every key defender, they might double, triple team him. So one to watch, but preseason reports are showing at the moment that he is dominating. He is fit, which is something they want. And I think contract year as well, Joe. Fit contract year is at breakout again for Tom Lynch.
he's going to play for the worst team in the comp. They're going to get smashed every week, and he's the obvious go-to target. So
Mm-hmm.
he's going to cop the best defender. Yes, he can train well, but he isn't a spring chicken anymore. He's definitely got a lot of mileage on the legs, a lot of mileage on the body. I don't know. For me, he's a no. Plus, I certainly don't like having forwards in my forward line. We love having non-forward forwards
Yep.
here at the center bounce, and so he is as forward as they come, and he has to stay forward because it's either him or Mikel Lefau. Those are
They've
the
got
only
no one
two
else.
options. No one
Yeah.
else. So
Nobody else.
I don't know, and their early fixture's not the best. I mean, they've obviously got Carlton to start off, and up against Jacob Wittering, and Jacob Wittering is probably one of the best, if not the best, one-on-one defender in the comp, maybe after Sam Taylor. So tough, tough ask going for Tom Lynch at the start of the year.
Yeah, I guess kind of it's a bit of a test as well, right? Hey, look, Tom Lynch, welcome back to the AFL. He's one of the best defenders in the AFL. So watch and see. I don't think round one is going to be as much of a blockbuster as what it has been in previous years. I think it's going to be a, hey, North Melbourne versus Brisbane, where someone's going to get slapped and the other team just shows up. At least they'll like have good ticket sales, right?
It won't be a blockbuster. It will just be a buster. It will just be a buster because they're going to be busted.
There you go.
Yeah. Sam Powell-Pepper, I love the way this guy goes about it. He is the Russell Westbrook of the AFL. If you know about NBA, you know that he just goes hard, unpolished. He just wears his heart on his sleeve and goes 100%. Unfortunately, he's not really good at anything other than doing that.
Mm.
He busts his gut because he's not the most skillful player and he's not the most talented player either. So he just tries to eke out every bit of talent that he's got in his body, and you love to see it. I'm a massive lover of this guy. Never say a die attitude. Hopefully, hoping that he could play maybe a high half forward type of role for Port Adelaide with their incredible buy would certainly mean that at 180k certainly presents a bit of value there. But unfortunately, preseason reports suggest that he was playing exclusively forward thus far, which is not what we want to hear for his Supercoach scoring hopes.
Yeah, I guess kind of the only thing really kind of saving that at the moment is he's still fit, which is what you want. But the guy's only valued at like a 20. So if he scores a 50 in a game, he's going to make some money. Maybe we're going to run out of rookies. So we have to play Sam Powell-Pepper. I don't know. Surely he can average like a 60, Joe, and we're just happy to have him make a couple of K and then carry him through the early buys and say, see you later. So, yeah.
He's reliant on goals, unfortunately. I mean, he had no goals, 3 behinds for 18 points. That's not what you want.
Maybe he plays key forward now that Todd Marshall's out for the season. Who knows?
Oh,
We've seen crazier things.
Yeah, well, if Ken Hinkley does that, then he really does want to get the sack. Dan Curtin playing for another coach who's under a bit of pressure at Adelaide. Dan Curtin played 7 games last year. There's some suggestions that he's really bulked up over this preseason. Could be featuring in some CBAs, but is more likely to play almost as a high half forward type of role, which is still acceptable in Supercoach because it's not a key forward and means that he does get around stoppages. And I think will feature in some centre bounce attendances where, he had 46% there for a 52, which is not too bad. 18% for a 44 and 0% for a 58. So clearly he can show that he can score based regardless of his CBAs, which means that he is a very talented player.
Yeah, I think they'll play the ball through him as much as they can, really. I mean, they spent an early draft pick on him last year to bring him in. Him and Draper definitely can make it work. High half forward is a lot better than key forward for these type of players, especially the way that Adelaide plays. I would not be surprised if he sneaks his way into getting some CBAs at some point. It won't be big numbers, but it will be something. And if he's not, he's used in that transition. So 150k, you can't really go wrong. If you're around the ball, you're going to see it. No worries.
Yeah, in the Sandful, I mean, you look at his...
Yeah, you take that any day of the week for 150k.
Averaging 78 points of fantasy, that's not for a season. Pretty good. Yep. So, plus he has a later buy in round 15 playing for the Crows. So that is actually quite impressive for Dan Curtin. Jack Martin.
He's in my team. Yeah, Jack Martin is one of those interesting cases where, mate, did Carlton get shafted? I think they kind of did. They brought him over on 700k, 5 years of really not doing much. I mean, over that period of time, let me just try and count it up. He played close to 50 games or around 50. So 16. In 5 years, 50. Okay. Definitely not worth the money, though, that they spent on him. The one thing about Geelong is outside of Josh Jenkins, they really don't bring in good mature age talent or talent in general that isn't going to play. I mean, it was Stevens from St Kilda, right? So potentially there's something there as well. But Jack Martin still has something left in the tank. I think with a few other players not there, with Gary Rowan no longer in the team, there is potential for him to play just to track over the preseason, I think.
Yeah. If he went to any team other than Geelong, I don't think anyone would have...
That's it.
Would have looked at him. But because he went to Geelong and everything that ridiculously annoying football club does is gold. Like
it works.
Like they could be constipated and it ends up actually being in their benefit to be constipated for some reason or whatever. Like Geelong just can't make any mistakes. And so They picked this guy up, and they love a mature age player, and they play them. So, yeah, early buy sucks, but the price is pretty good for what he can dish out. But he is very injury prone, so he could be one of those Sam Walshes or Cam Guthrie type players who might be given an opportunity but breaks down because their body's just not
Yeah.
up to it.
You don't need him the whole season. Like,
No.
similar to a Lynch. So if he's fit to start the season, you're okay. That's all you need. That's all you're going to get. That's all you want.
This guy is mostly fit, but he just never gets played because he just doesn't seem very good.
Yeah, it's a funny one, isn't it? Quinton Narkle. I don't know if it's a they just gave him a bit of a lifeline, said, cool, we'll pay you out for a couple of years. You can go home, jump on that. They have farms in WA, right? Just go to the farm, hang out in the bush. You'd hope with his type of caliber of player that he wants to play. He wants to play as much as he can. Hasn't really seen much success outside of what he did at Geelong. He's trying to grasp for that. My only problem is that I just don't think there's a spot for him at the moment. One, to track. We know what he can do. Mature age body, he can at least play a full game. He'll have the fitness to play the full game. He's got the body to play a full game, having been in the AFL for a decent amount of time. As you say, though, Joe, Sandful stats don't lie. Under 150K, you take that any day of the week, right?
Yeah, for a player who's actually going to play, I think this guy's just pure depth. Just pure depth at this point. And if he plays...
If he plays. Yeah. That's why we're tracking him in the preseason.
That's why we're tracking him in the preseason. If he plays, he plays. But I don't think he will at this stage. And if he does, it's going to be a very subpar role. He doesn't have a good buy, obviously playing for Fremantle. So that is it, ladies and gentlemen. All of those cheaper players under 300K that you might be thinking of starting in your Supercoach sides, what sort of prospects they might have, their likelihood of featuring in their team's best 22. So if you liked what you had to see or hear from us today, please drop us a like, subscribe if you're new, hit that notification bell to not miss out on any of the content and streams that we are dropping on a regular basis.
Guys, we've got a lot of content left to go, a lot of preseason left to go. A lot of you guys have been asking, that's a lot, Joe. A lot of you guys have been asking, hey, when is Supercoach out around Australia Day? So you don't need to put it in the comments every time, but if you want to, that's okay too.
Hey, because it feeds the algorithm. And we love answering repetitive questions all the time. This is what we live for.
Is Sam Walsh a good pick? Okay. Let's think of a couple more. We'll see how we go. Guys, stay tuned for the next episode. Plenty of stuff to come because here at the Centre Bounce, we do the hard work so you guys don't have to. Bye for now.